Hello and welcome to HKA Talks 2. Today we are joined by Alastair Young, who leads Dentons Middle East Disputes Practice. Alastair, welcome.
Thank you.
To start, I think it would be helpful if you could provide a brief overview of your practice, the types of disputes that you and your team are typically involved in.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm a partner at Dentons, and as you said, I head up the dispute resolution team in the Middle East. Of those who are or aren't fully familiar with Dentons, we've been in the Middle East for just over 50 years, so that the longest-standing international law firm with a footprint in the region. And we do a number of things, as you anticipate from a large law firm like ourselves. But one of the things that's at the heart of what we do is dispute resolution, and inevitably in the Middle East, that has a very high construction, engineering, and infrastructure focus. We work throughout the GCC countries. We've got offices in Riyadh, Jeddah, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Muscat, Amman. And in all of those locations, we support our clients on their disputes in the construction sector. And we typically, not exclusively, work for contractors. Probably 60–65% of our business, maybe a little bit more, is for contractors. Often because of the scale of the projects here, that they're in JV with other contractors. And we worked on a number of the largest projects that you've seen through the region. So Doha Metro, Doha Airport, Dubai Airport, Abu Dhabi Airport, Muscat Airport, ports, the metro in Dubai, various road projects, and some commercial building as well. We tend to do in international arbitration, either ICC or locally seated, depending upon where the project is. But we also do occasionally venture further afield into the CIS states and down into Asia, and occasionally further towards home in Europe. So it's a broad spread, but it tends to be large engineering and construction projects that aren't going to plan.
That's interesting. Thanks, Alastair. Of course, we all know that COVID-19 has had and continues to have a significant impact on construction and engineering projects worldwide. I just wonder if you can explain and expand a little bit on some of the issues or some of the key issues that your clients are typically dealing with. And I note that you mentioned a large proportion of the work you work on is with JVs on very large projects. And I just wonder whether there are specific issues that are arising in respect of JVs, distinctly, as opposed to kind of single party contracts.
Yeah, sure. I think when we look back on the COVID episode in the years to come, I think we'll conclude that where we are now is right at the beginning, and the impact of COVID is going to run for a very, very long time. But both in terms of the way that we operate, but also the fallout for projects. So, at the moment, sort of sitting here today, the issues that our clients have been dealing with have been, pretty sort of fundamental, around, how are we going to continue or finish off projects when there's a restriction on movement? Where is our supply chain going to get its materials from? There's clearly, a decent stock in region to begin with, but that started to run out, and as countries started to take more and more draconian but necessary steps in order to contain the virus, the movement of people became a bigger and bigger issue. Now, in the UAE, the construction sector was identified as an essential service, so it was never shut down, and that's true for the majority of the GCC countries. I couldn't say it was all of them because I don't have those figures, the stats off the top of my head, but certainly in the UAE and Saudi, that it was a protected sector, but that doesn't mean that it was immune from COVID. So, one of the immediate challenges that a lot of our clients faced was how do they protect their workforce. They tend, or often in the GCC, live in mass accommodation centres where you can't easily isolate. So that was an early challenge that they really had to get a grip of. And working with us and other consultants that we work with, they were able to minimise, albeit not eliminate, the risk of infection, both in the camps as people travel from their accommodation sites, on the buses, which we're very familiar with seeing in the UAE, to the site itself. How is that risk contained? There was then the issue of whether suspension was appropriate, and our clients were trying to position themselves, so that they're as well protected as they can be, to deal with that. Inevitably, employers in circumstances where construction is a protected sector were saying, no, you can carry on, but it isn't business as normal, and our clients spent quite a lot of time trying to mitigate those risks. It's one thing to say carry on, being able to carry on in the way you could before, it's going to be a very different matter. And inevitably, issues of force majeure and change of laws, came up, and those are issues that we are grappling with and helping our clients to grapple with each and every day. So it was dealing with the basic stuff to begin with, and I think as we go forward in the next months and probably years, we'll be helping our clients deal with the fallout from COVID and how they deal with the inevitable delays, which is where it's going to be focused to projects, and whether those delays were in fact anything to do with COVID or whether they were delays that would have happened anyway, which is bound to be a point of some contention between employer and contractor.
Sure.
Thanks, Alastair. So we've got a really good understanding of the types of issues that your clients are dealing with, and I guess sort of elaborating on that. So how have your clients changed in the way that they interact, with you as a law firm since the pandemic hit, and do you anticipate any of those changes, becoming the new normal?
Well, the one certainty is, I haven't been in the same room as one of our clients since we were locked down in. I think we were locked down on the 20th of March, and Dubai is coming out of the lockdown now, but that doesn't mean that people want to or are able to meet up. So we've gone to a remote conferencing just like we're doing now, and I have to say it's worked seamlessly. If you'd said to me in early March, this is how you're going to have to work in 10 days' time, and you will get no warning of it, I'd have been very, very anxious about it, and as I think most people would have been. But the reality is, necessity is the mother of all invention, and it's worked. We speak to clients regularly, just as we are now, and it's pretty seamless. Now, what it'll be like when we have to go in and take difficult witness statements, or we want to see the documents that aren't easily provided electronically, large A1 scale designs, for example. I think that's going to be different. Or if you've got to have a difficult meeting where it's much easier to be in the room, I think that'll be different too. But so far, the way that we've interacted with our clients has been very different, but to be honest, no less effective.
Yeah, that's good. Good to know. I think we're all adjusting to the new norm, aren't we? I just wonder how much of a snapback there will be afterwards. I
think this is going to form part of the way that we work going forward. That's not to say face-to-face meetings won't happen, but I think the desire for them will have been mitigated, and it'll be a blend of video conferencing and actually meeting up, which will make things much more efficient.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Just moving on, given the current financial impact of the pandemic, I wonder whether you think that your clients will look at more alternative ways to finance their disputes. Obviously, it's a kind of growing issue at the moment. And if you do see that more with your clients, I wonder if you see that as a way to protect their cash position, or a way to expedite proceedings, or perhaps a combination of both.
Yeah, so I'll answer that directly in a moment, but there's absolutely no doubt that the entire construction supply chain, from employer at the top to the smallest subcontractor, is really suffering from a lack of cash. And it's worth remembering that 4 weeks ago we were theoretically at least in negative oil price territory. So, even if COVID hadn't happened, we'd have had a world-dominating story of low oil prices, but that's almost been forgotten. But where it's not being forgotten is in the supply chains in the Middle East countries that are, you'll know, heavily dependent on oil for revenue. So the construction supply chain is under massive pressure around cash. We see that day in, day out, and protection of cash and utilization of cash and realizing cash, I think, dominates most commercial activities at the moment. So anything that is going to help with that is going to be of interest. And I think it probably is not an exaggeration to say that this is the moment of litigation funding. It's been around for 15 or maybe slightly more years, but mainly in the UK and the US and Australia, tending to deal with quite a narrow tranche of claims, quite contractual heavy, or claims that are, on their face very, very strong. But we've seen prior to COVID and prior to the oil price dropping, an increased interest from funders in the Middle East, in particular on a portfolio basis, because they are understandably nervous of just going all in on one claim, which if it wins and the money lands, they're heroes. But if they lose everything. And that is quite. That's, if I was a funder, that's quite a terrifying prospect. Even if you haven't got the best lawyers in the world. But a number of them have moved across to portfolio funding, where they fund a dozen claims or more. Sometimes we're dealing with one at the moment where there's many more claims, and it allows them to defray the risk, and they collateralize their cost position, and it just allows them to take greater risk in markets that are more challenging to price properly.
Sure.
And we are definitely seeing an increase, in interest from the funders. And in fact, I've got a call later today talking to a client, about the possibility of funding a suite of claims. I had a call yesterday, with a different client. So without a shadow of a doubt, I think that landscape is going to move, because I think for the construction supply chain to cash fund some of these claims, which as you well know, they can cost $5, $6, $7, $10 million to run from start to finish, on an uncertain outcome. Hopefully not too uncertain if they use us, but it is uncertain.
Two sides.
Precisely. I think we're going to see clients really engaging in this, and I also think it's going to change the way in which law firms do business. I think we're already seeing the world of the hourly rate with the meter ticking. That's consigned to history. And we're having to do more on a risk basis, on a fixed fee basis, or on a blend. We see some hourly rates, but there's there can be a contingent uplift. So I think it's going to change the way everything works. But if the funders maintain their appetite for the Middle East and they stick in the market, I think we're going to see a significant increase in the volume of cases being brought, but they'll be brought on markedly different bases.
Sure, that is interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, so you've got that perfect storm, haven't you, where the funder appetite has increased, at the same time as the client appetite. And it's interesting the point you mentioned about law firms possibly looking at having some skin in the game as well, and possibly looking at putting these together with funders to see if they can they can all share in some of the risk and some of the rewards with the client as well. So just to finish off, I guess it's the $1 million question. Once the restrictions have been lifted in full, do you think, I know we touched on it already, but do you think there'll be any permanent changes to how the legal and construction community operates? Essentially, are there any positive lessons that can be taken away? Beyond, I guess, the efficiency that's going to be driven by, conducting meetings virtually rather in person, possibly a few less air miles as well. But I wondered if there's any other kind of permanent changes that you foresee going forward.
Well, I think the biggest change, which is the impact of which is unclear as to its extent, but the fact it's going to happen is pretty clear, is the economy is going to take a hit, and probably quite a big one. And I think that is going to directly impact on a global basis the scale and volume of construction projects going forward. I don't think for one moment it's all going to stop. That's not what I'm saying. But I can see some of the more marginal projects which were run more in, I don't say hope than expectation, but they were on the riskier end of the scale. I think they will fall away. So I think the volume of work over the next 3 or 4 years is likely to contract, and therefore the number of contractors initially at least chasing a declining pool is going to increase, and that's going to really hammer margins that were already under some pressure, to put it mildly. So I think we'll see consolidation in the contractor marketplace, and that is already starting. I think in the way the construction industry itself works, those who are doing the constructing, it's difficult to see how that's going to change substantially, except for volume. You have to be on site in order to build it, just as sort of common sense, if you like. In terms of those of us who support the industry, then I think it's going to be very different, because I think the demands for you to be physically present in the way that perhaps we were, is going to drop away. And I can see with law firms, for example, I think it'll still be a requirement to have people on the ground in the country concerned. I think it'll be, for example, very, very difficult to credibly operate in Saudi if you don't have people on the ground, and that's the same in Qatar and in the UAE, and I think in Muscat and elsewhere. But I think the scale of the operation you'll need on the ground won't be as great, because I think people have, if you like, crossed the Rubicon on remote working, and they've realised that as long as you're of a sufficient scale to invest properly in the IT infrastructure that's needed to make it work, and that is expensive, so you do need to be of a certain size to have that benefit. If you do have it, then actually you can work remotely and effectively from anywhere. And I think we'll see more sort of flexible and agile working, and more flexible and agile structures as people try to utilise individuals in their business who they hadn't previously immediately thought of utilising. And we have certainly seen that in our business, and that's one area which we are definitely going to continue to drive hard. Is making sure, whilst the business may possibly be smaller, it'll be much more highly utilised and much more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, and moving into generating new business in a sort of a post-COVID world, do you think there's going to be challenges there? Because obviously, for lawyers and consulting firms, a lot of business development, is conducted on a face-to-face basis, and video conferencing works well, with clients that you already have relationships with. I'm just curious as to whether you feel there'll be any difficulty in trying to develop those new relationships that will be on par with your current ones, in what might be a predominantly kind of virtual environment.
Look, I think that's a really big issue, which we don't know the answer to at the moment, because doing what we do and doing what HKA does, is fundamentally all about trust. And you're asking people to instruct you, sometimes at considerable expense, and they get as a minimum, it seems to me that there's an expectation that they might actually have met you before.
Yeah.
And that I think that makes perfect sense. And a lot of our clients, and I know a lot of your clients, are in South Korea and Japan and further afield. And is it realistic that you're going to be able to maintain those relationships as effectively as you did before, and well enough, and develop new ones with different people in different businesses unless you're physically there? And I think the answer to that is no. And I think I know everybody's saying that business travel is going to change, but they're not saying business travel is dead. And I think that's the reason why. I think there'll be a lot of focus on making sure that the return on investment from business travel is better evidence and perhaps tested more thoroughly. But I do think that we will still have to travel, in order to maintain important relationships and develop new ones. So, I don't think that business travel in that sense is over. But I can see that once relationships are established, that the frequency of travel may drop as people become used to, talking, as we are now, which is a very, very efficient way of doing business.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, Alastair. Well, thanks very much for joining us. That was really interesting.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for hosting me.
Yeah, thank you, Alastair.